have a lot of small airlines in Africa. We need actually more partnerships on the African continent, Then funding is an issue.
So what advice would you give someone who has a big dream of joining the aviation industry but with little experience?
The solution to that, to be honest, was...
Derek Nseko is an award-winning entrepreneur, qualified commercial pilot.
Derek has been instrumental in creating platforms that bridge the gap between
Derek's
global
vision
aviation trends
and
local opportunities in Africa.
In aviation innovation, fostering growth and sustainability
we got a lot of
across the
support
industry.
from companies, for example, like Rolls-Royce. What is one decision, a decision that is unconventional, that has shaped your entrepreneurial journey?
Welcome to another exciting episode of Kaks Weekly with me, Abdullahi Abubakar Kaka, where we dive into the minds of entrepreneurs and global leaders. Today, on this episode, we have Derek Nseko, who is a commercial pilot and an award-winning entrepreneur. We discussed aviation in Africa, and he answered the question from Captain Ibrahim Sharif, which he left in our previous episode. And also, Derek left a question for our next guest. You don't want to miss any part of this podcast. Stay tuned as I bring to you the future of aviation in Africa.
Let's talk dreams, let's talk gold. Stories of success that never get old. Entrepreneurs rising, breaking the mold. On Kaks Weekly, the future unfold. Kaks Weekly, shining so bright.
Let's just dive into the latest development of the headlines in Africa at the moment when it comes to aviation. What are your thoughts on the regulatory challenges like the ones FlySafair is facing in South Africa?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. It's a very tricky situation for them, and it's an interesting one for the industry more broadly. But I can understand it from an airline perspective. Because first of all, I think to give context to your listeners, the issue here is that a number of airlines in the country, in South Africa, filed a complaint against FlySafair. They believe that they are operating unfairly in terms of the rules. There's an Air Services Licensing Act in South Africa that stipulates that foreign ownership of airlines should be limited to about 25%. It's actually 25%. So the people complaining allege, that Safair's ownership has reached around 75% in terms of foreign ownership. And this issue went to the Air Services Licensing Act, which gives the green light for airlines to operate. There's a domestic one, and there's an international licensing council, and the licensing council has also made a judgment that it is indeed true that FlySafair has exceeded the limit, in terms of foreign ownership. So that is a very serious situation because it can lead to the suspension of FlySafair's license to operate, both domestically and even the international routes. Now, there's serious consequences from an industry perspective. Now, for South Africa, FlySafair controls about 60% of the market. I was in South Africa when the last airline that collapsed was called Comair, and it had a huge share of the local aviation market, and that sent a ripple effect around the industry, because the number of seats available had been reduced. So that affected the industry hugely. The industry is still recovering. So the industry can't even afford to have FlySafair going under or having this operation stop, because it will have a huge effect, considering the number of seats that it has. So, but the other questions it really brings up around ownership and our... For example, there's a balancing act in terms of to what extent should we be, as countries, should we welcome foreign investment? Then there's that balancing act as well with national interests as well, protecting our national interests, which is what that rule is about. But then again, there's a huge plus to attracting as much foreign investment as possible. So I think this is bringing back that question again, because for our airlines in Africa, that kind of foreign investment is exactly what we need, in order to access, maybe extra skills, to access more resources that are coming from abroad. So that brings that question to the fore. Are these percentages too small? Are our country's thinking small when it comes to that? So that is a discussion that we need to have, because at the end of the day, it also affects the competitive environment. More foreign investment, means airlines can have more competition. It means you're increasing the connectivity of the continent and of these countries. So yes, there's serious questions to ask there.
On the other hand, we saw Qatar Airways acquiring a 25% stake at South Africa's Airlink. How significant are this kind of partnership? You just mentioned it, but how do you see significant the future of aviation in Africa?
That partnership, that is important. I think it's mutually beneficial. Airlink is one of the biggest airlines in Africa. It has grown hugely ever since the pandemic as well, and actually even ever since it got under the franchise. It had a franchise partnership with South African Airways, and it's now completely on its own. It has grown tremendously. They have a huge fleet, more than 60 aircraft, in fact. It's one of the biggest airlines in Africa. In fact, it is one of the profitable airlines that you can speak of on the African continent. Very well-run airline. So this partnership further enhances its place as well in the market, because it is partnering with an airline with a global reputation. So Qatar Airways has invested, has up to 25%. They've taken that 25% share in Airlink. So Airlink can now access even including Qatar Airways broader network. So it's kind of, in a way, a low-key expansion as well. Airlink's ability to reach the rest of the world, as well as Qatar Airways expanding its footprint in Africa. Qatar Airways is already one of the largest foreign operators in Africa. So that already now strengthens its position because Airlink is a network carrier and it has quite a number of destinations that it serves, especially in Southern Africa. A very strong airline to partner with. So I think it's good for both of them. It's good for African Airlines, good for us, because the thing is, African Airlines, we have a lot of small airlines in Africa. We need actually to support more partnerships on the African continent, And this,
So how do you see it helping tourism in Africa? Because we know most of the reasons why people don't come, some of the flights are not available to travel. So these partnerships, do you see it helping tourism?
Absolutely. The partnership means increased connectivity. Now, for example, the Airlink partnership, it means passengers who are flying Qatar Airways might actually have more options, and in terms of connecting to more African cities in Africa, so it strengthens the linkages between both airlines, so there's a higher chance that, more potential connections between cities in Africa and those beyond Africa will be created. That's a plus for the tourism sector, definitely.
So I'm going to pivot to your personal story. Can you share to us your journey? You're a qualified commercial pilot, and then now you are a founding person or the founder of Airspace and iFly Global. What motivated you to take that leap? This episode is brought to you by areaworld.com, your ultimate destination for global success stories, entrepreneurship, and tools that will make you transform your life. Visit areaworld.com today for more inspirational stories. Let's go back to the show.
Yes, so it wasn't much of a leap initially when that happened. It was a bit of a pivot for me. So I think there's always a lesson to learn there, that you should be a bit dynamic as someone in industry or whatever in life, being able to pivot from one thing to the next, or to reinvent yourself, based on the situation. So for me, there was a lot of circumstances that got me into entrepreneurship. But
Can you share some of those circumstances? Because I think our audience would like to know. Because you are a pilot. Everyone wants to be a pilot. A lot of people want to be a pilot. Like, it's a safe occupation, but then you pivot and then move to your own entrepreneur's journey.
Yes. So initially, I started the social enterprise when I was actually in practice. I started it when I was still in flight school as a student. And it was all about breaking barriers, because I could relate to the community and a lot of people who were trying to get in, young people trying to get into the industry, and they don't have the resources, they don't have the information, they don't have the access. So there's a lot of barriers, there's a huge gap, between the community and the industry. So for me, it was about, it started in the most simple of terms, as kind of like an awareness initiative. So it evolved a bit. But the circumstances I'm speaking of as well, I had a patch where I did not have work. I could not get work, So it kind of also helped me focus more on the entrepreneurial side of life, especially that I had already started taking the steps before I even qualified. So yes, so I got a lot much farther with that during that period. So there's a bit of circumstance with that. Maybe I could have been too busy if it wasn't for that circumstance, So then that, as a program as well, it grew, and it is a skills development project. It's all about breaking barriers, bridging the gap between the community and the institutions, bridging the gap between the institution and the industry, getting more Africans into this industry, creating the pathways for people to find their way into different careers, and to shed a light on those careers, because the opportunities are endless. People always tend to look at, obviously, being a pilot as the main or only thing, So there's a lot of other things, and there's a lot that makes our industry what it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of professionals out there who are doing amazing things, and the positions they're in should also be a target for young people who are getting in. So yes, among other things.
So can you elaborate, or can you tell us what the iFly Academy is all about? Because to my listeners, they wouldn't know. I just said iFly, but then the global. But what is the academy about, and how did it come about, the academy?
Yeah, so the academy came about as I had explained earlier, because what we did was we started an aviation awareness program. So just basically, as it was, just visiting schools and carrying people that young people could relate to in these schools, carrying pilots, going with the women who are making it in the field, and showing them that there's people like you who are doing these professions. Because remember, there's a lot of stereotypes as well that are attached to our industry.
Yeah.
How people think it's a man's profession. A lot of that is flying. Yeah. And then everyone also thinks cabin crew is for the ladies, and and then there's all these other professions that are not as glamorous as those ones, but they're also very important, and and they're very rewarding too, So it's about taking that aviation to young people. So that's where the program started. So we started by doing that, and then giving young people access to the industry, like taking them to like the airport. A few people also maybe getting a chance to fly. So it started the most modest of ways. And at that time, it was obviously very difficult because we didn't have a lot of support. So, trying to do all these things out of pocket, and trying to, but then again, those situations also make you a bit more innovative. So there's always lessons to learn.
Yeah. I'm going to come to the challenges, actually, because in every sector, in every industry, you face challenges. So what were the biggest challenges that you faced? And how did you overcome them in this industry?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge I would point out would be financial. Yeah. So yes, so I'm just talking about the iFly Academy project. Would be financial, because aviation, just by its nature, is an expensive venture.
Yeah.
So yes.
I just told you I know a few people who are into aviation. You're one of them, and in Africa. So I can imagine the immense challenge in funding and all that.
Absolutely. No, it's an expensive venture, and it's a very niche field. It's a very niche. So it often sometimes gets even overlooked by the traditional methods that even say governments and stuff that they employ to try and elevate certain other professions. So it also often gets put on the wayside. So yes, so there's a funding issue. So I mean, that was one of the early problems, because with funding then, in order to try and achieve scale, because it was very localized in the beginning, you're just going into your community. And then at that time, we were trying to innovate and say, what education programs can we come up with, that can bridge that gap, that can introduce people to the industry, but, something like a proper training project where, someone can learn, but then how do we scale it up, So, yes, so then funding is an issue.
Yeah.
So that is the main one, getting that kind of support. But the solution to that, to be honest, was getting as many partnerships as possible, and trying to rally the industry. So those partnerships come in very handy when it comes to projects such as those. And then there's organizations out there in the world as well that have been designed to support such projects, or maybe they have the right support structures, or they are running programs already that you can align with. Also, yes, so that is really the best way to do it, to find the right partnership. So, like for us, we partnered with a lot of players in the industry. We got a lot of support from companies, for example, like Rolls-Royce, the engine manufacturer. Those have been our great partners. Yes, and they've assisted us, especially in kind, with resources. We've used some of their programs as well, especially because now we moved from aviation and we went into the STEM field, because, yes, that is the very foundation as well of education in the sector. So how can we introduce young people to STEM education?
Yeah.
And then what STEM resources can we use? So companies like Rolls-Royce already had those programs in-house. And then it was just a matter of partnering with them and accessing some of their resources, other companies like Embraer, the aircraft manufacturer as well, So those are key partners, So now, like, for example, with Embraer, during COVID, we did this project. It was a webinar series for Africa. Where, like, for 6 months, we had a series of webinars where each webinar we focused on a different profession, and we brought experts, we brought successful people from the fields, and we broadcast it around the whole of Africa, and we leveraged on another partner of ours who was the largest aviation group on Facebook. Actually, it's the largest aviation group in the world with about 400,000 people. Yeah, he's a Nigerian as well, probably someone you should as well. So yes, so that is kind of a way that you can, find some solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, you just mentioned a lot of skills needed there, especially when it comes to knowing how to partner and getting good partnership. But how can others, especially aspiring entrepreneurs, cultivate the skills that they need to achieve in this industry?
And in a way, I also find it because there's a lot of people who want to access and get into aviation. I think also entrepreneurship is a way that people can get into the industry, and the great thing about entrepreneurship is that there's no one who is asking you for your qualifications. You can just get in there and start whatever you want to start.
Yeah.
So yes, and whatever it is, if it adds value to the industry, then you're going to be embraced by the industry. But it's about Many
young people right now are intimidated by the aviation industry. They feel like, okay, this is like big people. This is a big league. Like when in media we have the big leagues and the small leagues. So what advice would you give someone who is like has a big dream of joining the aviation industry but with little experience?
Yeah, I know. It is a stereotype that, you know, obviously there's a glamour attached to it.
Yeah. So
there is that perception, and it seems to be in the clouds. Yeah, pun intended. You know, because you know it's a kind of a closed off thing, and it's not a very accessible space. Yeah, but if someone is determined, if someone is really interested in aviation, it's never too far away, because you know I've met people who are not even aware, for example, that there's an aviation school right in their own neighborhood. You know, so yes, so sometimes it's just a lack of information. I think for people who are looking to get into aviation, the most important thing now more than ever, the resources that we have online. So I don't think there's any excuse for someone to say that, you know, I don't know this, or I don't know if there's a school here, or I don't know what the process, even the process is. I mean, in this day and age where we have generative AI, it's a matter of asking your AI friend, ChatGPT, you know, and it'll tell you everything. You know? So there's no excuse, at least as far as information is concerned. And information is key. Knowledge is power, you know. So personally, growing up as well, I didn't have a lot of info. As much as I dreamt about the industry, I didn't have a lot of information. Yeah, but I find that having the right information is key to at least taking the steps. Yeah, and the industry is for everyone, because I'm in the industry. I've met people in this industry who are successful, people who are doing different things, but they are from all sorts of backgrounds. Yeah, so there's no single profile of person in this industry that says that this industry is for a specific kind of people. You know, and it's not just for the privileged. There's people who have come from a background of struggle, and they are in this and they're doing well. You know, so I believe anyone can get into the industry. It depends on what you want, and yes, obviously it is a very niche space, but the opportunities are many. The opportunities are many, to be honest with you.
So, talking about these opportunities, you know. Let me ask this question. How can African youth like tap into these opportunities? You mentioned some partnership with Rolls-Royce and all that. How can they tap into these opportunities, especially in STEM also? You know, can you elaborate on that, how they can tap into it?
Yeah, okay. I think that now also depends on from the outside looking in, where are you in life right now and what are your goals? What are your specific goals? Do you want to start a career in the industry? Because then that has its own specific pathway. What career is that as well? Yeah. So first of all, you need to find out, obviously, if this is what you want, then you start somewhere. If you want to be a pilot, find the flight school first. Which flight schools are in my area? Not in my area. Where else do you want to go? What will it cost? If I can't afford it, are there any funding resources out there? Is there anywhere I can access some kind of funding? You know, the information is out there, depending on where you want to start, to be honest with you. That is also key. Certain countries have more resources than others. You know, there are countries with scholarships. Even for aviation, there's some that don't. Then there's international organizations, for example, those that sponsor women, you know. So yes, so the resources can be there depending on where you're coming from and what specifically you're looking for. If you are looking to pivot from another profession to get into the industry, I mean, you could be an accountant. You can still get into the industry as an accountant, you know. So, so you can be a manager or something like that. You could be in IT. The industry is run by IT systems. So I think every little kind of profession as well exists in the industry. So there's a place for anyone who wants to pivot from one industry this industry, no matter what you are doing. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a lawyer, you can become an aviation lawyer.
Yeah.
If you can actually become an aviation doctor as well. So yeah, so the opportunities are there.
Great. Yeah. So Derek, if I'm going to ask you this, if you were to start your entrepreneurial journey this 2025, what would you do differently?
That's a tough one.
You just mentioned it. Well, you started, there was not much information, but now, with the likes of ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all that, so we can see the information is abundant, but then maybe you do something differently. Let me get your idea for that.
I think right now there's so much different ways to start business right now in terms of entrepreneur. I think right now I'd be thinking, how can I leverage AI? Can I leverage, IT and AI systems and things like that? How can I apply it to the industry? Because it's a new kind of technology that a lot of people have not applied to the industry yet. Yeah. I mean, it is being applied in different ways, but the potential is huge right now.
Yeah.
Or you can be one of the early people who apply a certain solution, to make the industry or to make certain things more efficient, or some processes to take away certain pain points in the industry. And we have many, so it's an opportunity right there as well. So I'll be looking at that. I probably need to look at that now already.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about technology, what role do you think they play in Africa's aviation industry? Technology, innovation and technology. What role do you think they play in shaping the African industry and aviation industry?
I think it's part and parcel of the evolution of the industry. I think it forms part of the pillars that drive our industry. Technology, without it, will still probably be in the 70s or something in terms of where our industry was. So a lot of it is driven by applying technology solutions. For example, I can tell you, even from the perspective of a pilot, the cockpit has changed so much over the last, let's say, 40 years or so. The cockpit has transformed. The role of a pilot has transformed. So I can tell you, for example, back in the day, you had about 4 people sitting in an aircraft cockpit, flight engineers and this and that. Now there's 2 pilots. Yeah, and we're already talking about single pilot operations. So there's aircraft that are being made. People are asking the question, do we need the 2 pilots anyways? It might go to 1. And while we are still at that, the discussion is already there that maybe we don't even need to have a pilot at all in the cockpit. So that's technology taking its course. Yeah, and so I mean, it's applied in so many different areas of the sector, to be honest. Flight operations, for us to, even safety, for us to be flying as safely as we are now. Commercial air accidents are a very rare thing now. I don't think people understand the extent to which this industry is safe, especially when it comes to airlines and commercial airline travel. We have years sometimes where nothing happens in terms of an accident around the entire world. So that is huge, and technology has a huge part to play with that. But mostly now it's as well driving those efficiencies, making our airlines more efficient, and perhaps even ensuring that airlines are making more money. Also for the passenger experience, there's a lot of technology involved now, the way you interact with your airline. So yes, technology, I think, in every little part of the industry, I think there's some form of application of technology. I need for the industry to continue innovating and evolving. And now we have all this drive towards being a more sustainable sector. Obviously, we need to play our part in terms of climate action, and technology has a huge part to play. It's part of our pathway we need to now introduce new technologies that can make our planes more efficient and help us to emit less emissions. So that's innovation and tech.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an exciting future for us from that perspective.
So we have a transition where the guest will ask a question to the next guest that we're going to have. So the previous question we had was from Captain Sharif.
What I would like to know is how our entrepreneurs balance their booksheet. Right? I'm really keen. I'm really interested because there's this big illusion that I'm doing well in business, but there's no record. I would like to see. I would like the next person to ask my people that how are they running their business.
I'm not sure in what context is asking that question, but for me, yeah, it's more about having a business discipline.
Yeah.
And I would say diversification as well is extremely important. I think especially with us, the sector can be a bit lean, and it's very hard as well to achieve certain, financial margins. So you need to diversify as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like me, I've been able to diversify within the sector itself. So skills development, media, and all sorts of other initiatives. Yeah.
So we're going to go on a quick fire round, which would be, I think, fun for you, and I guess. So this question is like very easy. What's the most inspiring place you've flown to as a pilot?
Why did you say it's very easy?
I think it's easy because there are places that you go. For example, when I first arrived in Istanbul the first time, I was like, wow, this is a very lovely place. So it's always in my memory. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me to probably Cape Town.
South Africa.
There's a way Cape Town makes me feel. And I always feel like I feel the way someone who would be, say, coming from Europe, and they have a certain perception of Africa.
Yeah. And
then you land in and you're like, wow, I can't believe this is Africa. That's how Cape Town makes you feel. Like it's just absolutely beautiful. It's an amazing place as well. So yeah, I think I would say it will be Cape Town. And it's my favorite city in Africa.
Yeah. Another question would be, what one book, podcast, or any resource that every entrepreneur, every experienced entrepreneur should read that you used before, that you read before? Or
that one would be, I would say, especially for entrepreneurs, I would say there's a book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. The Lean Startup. It's a very good book for entrepreneurs, especially those who are working under limited financial conditions. Yes, and I think there's a lot of innovation that's needed to be able to scale and to grow your business under those kinds of conditions. I think we need that in Africa.
Yeah.
I've had my fair share of that, working and trying to grow under very limited means. So yes, I think that book really teaches you a lot of innovative ways how to grow your business. Yeah.
So another tough question, but I think you can take your time to answer it. In one sentence, how would you define success?
Success for me, I'll probably give that answer because I come from my mind has a lot of, my point of departure really is like social entrepreneurship kind of perspective.
Yeah.
So I think impact is extremely important. So for me, success is it's prospering, while making an impact on the community. So if you can make an impact on the community or on society, then I think you're successful. Yeah, that is how I view success. I really see it through impact. Yeah.
So I think this will be a very good one to enter our next segment, which is, if you weren't in aviation industry, what other career path would you have chosen?
I wasn't in aviation. I would say probably I'm a bit of a geek, so I'm a bit of a mathematician. So I think I would see myself in the world of tech. Yeah, I probably fancy myself maybe as a software engineer or something of that sort. I don't know. Yeah.
So I know you have a media startup also, which you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I don't think it's even. It's been around for a while now.
Okay.
I'd say about. So it's called Airspace Africa. It's a digital publication that I run, and it's very important to the sector, I believe. For me, studying that is really about projecting African voices and getting African voices to share, authentically the African stories. And for me, it's about shaping the narrative around African aviation. So I think we've lacked that very much in Africa for a long time. I think the narrative is largely driven by non-African media, so I think it's very important as well to have African people shaping their own narrative. So for me, from an aviation perspective as well, I think that is an important thing, and that's something I'm proud of, what we're doing at Airspace Africa. So yes, and I'm happy that it's one of the most visited publications as well in Africa from the perspective. So that is it's an area where we've grown tremendously in the past few years. And yes, I think we are doing a good job for the African aviation sector, bridging the information gap as well, and being a part of the growth of the African aviation industry, especially now, myself now as well. It's more like being an advocacy partner for the industry, So yes, that is an important role to play. Yeah, that's Airspace for you.
So Derek, before we wrap up, what question would you like to leave for our next guest when it comes to entrepreneurship?
I would be curious. If I was the one in the interview, I'd want to ask what is one decision you've made, especially maybe a decision that is unconventional, that has shaped your entrepreneurial journey. What is the, that one decision that has shaped it the most?
That's a very good question. I think our next guest will be happy to answer that. Thank you so much, Derek Nseko, for talking to us here on Aria World. And that's the end of the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk dreams, let's talk gold. Stories of success that never get old. Entrepreneurs rising, breaking the mold. On Kaks Weekly, the future unfold. Kaks Weekly, shining so bright.